Gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Landry.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak. As you all know, this matter is of utmost importance to my constituents and many of others who ply their trade in the Gulf of Mexico. I've said all along that the most valuable resource in the Gulf of Mexico is not what lies underneath the waters, but the men and women who work tirelessly to provide our great nation with the energy necessary to fuel our economy. While the families of the 11 lives lost will forever bear a scar of sorrow, we can assure that those loved ones did not die in vain. This was the request of our body from those very families who pled with Congress not to halt drilling. These families simply asked that we conduct the oversight necessary to ensure that the trade their loved ones chose in this country continues in a responsible and safe manner. Louisiana's 3rd Congressional District was and still is the epicenter of this disaster, and everyone labels this tragedy a disaster. And by all means, it was a disaster. It was the accident was a disaster, the spill was a disaster, and the President's decision to halt deepwater drilling was a disaster. This committee has had countless hearings on the disaster. We have had the privilege to multitude reports and have had the opportunity to question those who conducted these investigations. In the end, this accident was caused by a lack of oversight by the government and by human error. The economic disaster was multiplied by the President's decision to issue a drilling moratorium. His senseless declaration in many ways was even worse than the spill. And my colleagues on this committee and throughout the House, along with the industry, have been fighting to recover ever since. It's been nearly 2 years since the disaster. And as I warned 2 years ago, when the President issued the moratorium, you can't turn this industry on and off like a light switch. Trying to do so injures all Americans. Once you flip the off switch, the dominoes of cooks, all field service companies like tugboat workers, drilling contractors, safety managers, divers, transporters, and many more pieces of this industry begin to fall. To believe that you can simply command these companies back into existence after single-handedly crippling their revenue stream and giving employees their pink slips is impossible. The moratorium created such a chaos in the permitting process that even after the official moratorium was lifted, a de facto moratorium took place. The 6-month drilling moratorium and its de facto moratorium that followed caused 162,000 Americans to lose their jobs. So basically, this administration fired 162,000 heads of families. They told these families there would be no vacation, that college would have to wait, that the wedding would have to be scaled back, and that the American dream was gone and vanished because their government simply overreacted. Or maybe they simply didn't like who Mommy and Daddy worked for. Those children saw their government basically give up their mother or father's job to people in Brazil, Egypt, Angola, or Ghana. Furthermore, the President and BP negotiated to satisfy only the claims of people who were impacted by the actual incident of the spill, not those affected by the repercussions of this moratorium. So what's worse? Mom and Dad lost their job, and BP and the President agreed to cover the losses of their neighbor who simply owned a motel. Finally, and perhaps most tragically, the drilling moratorium did not solve our national problem of energy independence or give Americans much-needed relief at the pump. With all the President's rhetoric about moving energy development forward in light of our high gas prices, I think he has a lot of explaining to do. Mr. Chairman, I'm thrilled that this committee is using its oversight authority to require the administration to own up to their actions and fully explain why the moratorium was an appropriate response to the Macondo blowout. Louisiana's 3rd District, the state as a whole, and our nation deserves the answer. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.